I'm here today with Native Spirit Adrift to talk about Ghost at the Gallows, out August 18th on Century Media Records. Thank you for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Pedro. Appreciate it.
Before we talk about the album, I got to ask you that Pantera shirt that you're wearing, did you pick that up now at this new revival tour that they're going through?
I didn't. I think this came from like Poland or somewhere. I think I will be possibly going to one of those shows. Spirit Adrift's drummer is very good friends with this guy Mike DeLeon, who has played guitar for Phil's solo project, and DeLeon's band is opening a few of those shows around the Texas area. So I hopefully we'll get to go to one of those shows.
Let me just say, considering I don't know what the price of the tickets are in your area, in your neck of the woods, but over here, I would probably have to sell a kidney. So I think it's one of those that you can pull the friend card as much as possible to get yourself into the vet. I've done the same.
Oh
So
yeah, it's no problem, man.
I'm
Listen,
not passing judgment. I've done the same.
being a touring musician, there are very few perks. We don't get health insurance, we don't get shit, but we do get to ask our other friends who are touring musicians for shows. That's the least they can do.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm not passing judgment. I did the same thing. It's a killer week here because you got Gojira playing and Pantera in the same week, and both the tickets are quite pricey. So I had to go through my Rolodex to see who I knew and who could help me out. So not passing any judgment. But great
Yeah,
T-shirt, by the way.
thank you, bro. I'm all about the tie dye these days. I don't know why.
You have a little bit of that dude love thing happening.
Yeah, totally.
So let's talk about this record from Spirit Adrift. Have you had time to sit back and analyze the album and perhaps extract from it what atmosphere or what essence the sound of this album provides to the listener?
Man, I'll be honest. I don't listen to my own stuff once it's done. Um, with this album, I have to hear the songs a million times while I'm writing and demoing them. I have to hear them a million times while we're rehearsing them, a million times in the studio, mixing everything. And I've listened to the whole album front to back. Once in our touring van, I got a I got a final mix from Zeus, who mixed and mastered it, and I just went for a drive out in the woods in our touring van, listened to it once in there, and then I listened to it here at home. Had kind of like a ritualistic, like psychedelic whole setup, and listened to it once there, and I said, okay, it's done. And I don't once that's over, I don't listen to my own albums at all. I will say, I think the big vibe with this one was like a lot of death and loss and sort of a funereal type of thing there, and also moving back to the South. I spent the last 9 years in Phoenix, Arizona, which I was really kind of out of my element there because I grew up in smaller towns in the South. And in 2020, my wife and I moved to Texas, out in the middle of the woods and more of a small town thing. And I think that all really crept into the album. I would call it, it's like a Southern funeral metal album or something.
Has the evolution of the band, because if we look at the first record, we look at this record, there's obviously been an evolution. It's not like you guys have released the same album twice. Is that evolution of sound just an evolution from the band standpoint, or is that interconnected with your own evolution as an artist and as an individual?
That's a great question, man. It's something I think about and talk about a lot. Spirit Adrift started off as a solo thing. It was just me, and I didn't know it was going to be even like a studio project. I had a couple of songs that really meant a lot to me that I thought were good, that I was excited about. And I didn't even know if I was going to record them or what. And I just kind of figured it all out incrementally, day by day, one day at a time. And I ended up recording those songs. On the first few releases, I play all the instruments and all the vocals and everything. And then there was some outside interest in us playing live. We were contacted actually by Walter, who at the time was in charge of Roadburn Festival in the Netherlands, and he wanted the band to play. And I didn't want to tell him, well, there's no band, So I told him there was a band, and he was like, is this a full band? Are you? I was like, oh yeah, we've been practicing. Like, it's really coming along. It's sounding great. That was all bullshit. I didn't have a band or anything, but that made me put a band together. And it's just been a natural progression from there. It's really my life and Spirit Adrift are just intrinsically connected. So as I evolve and develop and grow as a person, so does Spirit Adrift. I've never had any sort of intentions or ulterior motives or anything. Just all I've ever wanted to do with it is write the best songs that I can that are totally honest and sincere and pure reflection of where I'm at in my life. And where I was at in the beginning, it was hard, it was tough, it was confusing and dark, and I think that's reflected in the music. And as my life got better, and as Spirit Adrift started playing bigger and bigger shows and festivals and stuff, the music just reflects that. I started listening more to the stuff I grew up on. Like Sabbath has always been my favorite band, so that's always been in there. But I love old Metallica, Thin Lizzy, Judas Priest, Trouble, and that all just kind of started coming to the forefront. I wanted it to be more of like a classic sound that's just focused on good songs.
Yeah, the Sabbath influence is undeniable. Like that mixture of classic heavy metal with some doom, walking that fine line that's not one, it's not the other, it's somewhere in between. I think that's always been there, perhaps a little bit more in the earlier stages than now, but I don't think you've ever lost that portion of your DNA and the DNA of the band as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Sabbath was my introduction to heavy music. I remember I loved Creedence from as long as I can remember, like Creedence and Leonard Skinner. And then Jimi Hendrix made me want to play guitar, but it was Black Sabbath that made me want to start a band. And they've been my favorite band ever since. And, they didn't think they were a heavy metal band. They were a heavy blues band or hard rock or whatever. And, as metal became this new genre and as it evolved in the early stages, there wasn't this obsession with, is that a thrash metal band? Is that a depressive suicidal black metal band? Is that all this like micro genre bullshit? Back in the day, it was like there wasn't a clear distinction between a heavy metal band, new wave of British heavy metal, proto thrash, like even the very first wave of black metal, if you consider like Merciful Fate and I don't know, Bathory, like they have a lot in common with new wave of British heavy metal. Merciful Fate has a lot in common with Queen. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? There's not all these rules and rigid distinctions between all these different genres. And all of my favorite bands, they don't have any rules. There's no interest in, we have to be a thrash band. That's so fucking boring. Or we have to be a doom band. To me, it's like there's good music and there's shit. And there's real metal and there's fucking poser bullshit. And I just want to play real metal.
Yeah, I grew up in that era, and it was for us, for me, my friends, we just looked at metal. Like we didn't look at Cannibal Corpse any different than we looked King Diamond, then we looked Obituary, then we looked Iron Maiden. For us, was just metal. Like we never went into the weeds in terms of, oh, it's this subgenre of this other subgenre. It was just music that we listened to, that we know it was in the periphery, and we knew we were a minority and we were a niche, and that's all that was. We just wanted something that was aggressive, that represented who we were as individuals, that was part of our own subculture, if you will. But you're
Hell
right, it
yeah.
was not that obsession did not exist. I think it's more of a new generational thing where categories, marketing, everything has to be put under
Yep.
the umbrella.
Man, music is about feeling. It's not about
Emotion.
thinking.
Yeah.
Keep the thinking in fucking school, man. Music is about like getting off and feeling something. So it's like the only thing that matters, whether you like a band or not, is how's it make you feel? You don't have to think, am I allowed to like this or am I not allowed to like, if it makes you feel good, then it's good. That's it.
I couldn't agree more with you. Now,
Cool.
how do you uh, marry this thought process that you have, which I agree 1,000%, because I view music the same way. One of the reasons why I don't rate album reviews, because I feel like you cannot give a number to art. Art is art. Either you enjoy it, you like it, you get it, or you don't. So I have the same similar attitude as you do. So how do you bring that in with the expectations that the fans then have, considering that this is not necessarily your debut album?
Uh Man, I don't think about any of that. Again, it's like when I pick up a guitar, if I play something and it makes me feel excited or whatever, or like, oh shit, I can't believe I just came up with that. That is the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that matters. I don't think about what amp am I going to use? What is this person going to think? It's just like, did I come up with something? Or a lot of times it feels like it was given to me from somewhere else that I didn't even come up with it, that I just found it. Like I discovered it. That's all that matters when I'm writing guitar parts, or writing lyrics or what. If I'm having trouble with the phrase, I know it's right when I go, oh man, and I feel something, intuitively. Um, Again, it's about feeling. It's about imagination and creating something that makes you feel something. And if I'm happy with it, then the people that are fans of Spirit Adrift will be happy with it. And if they're not, I can't predict if anybody else will like it. I can only know if I like it. And at the end of the day, I just have to, that's my only gauge. Do I like it? Is it good enough for me to be proud of it or something?
So for this album, when you picked up that guitar, and you start to write some of the acoustic parts that this album has, was that in the moment what that song called for, or did at any point in time do you start to see some of these acoustic moments to be some breadcrumbs that allow the album to have some interconnection between certain key songs in the overall design of the record?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I always like these two hands. I just had an acoustic guitar with me when I started playing the chord progressions in that. Um, but I think I actually wrote some of the like lead lines first on an electric guitar. Um, yeah, breadcrumbs would be a good way to describe it. Like little parts and little riffs. The best ones just sort of, it's like an explosion. It just comes out of nowhere. Oh shit, that's cool. And then you can kind of start to zoom out. I wrote and demoed probably like between 20 and 30 songs over the past couple of years, like 2020 to 2022. And I just kept whittling down and whittling down. And I would try to think, okay, these are the 8 songs that are going to be on the album. And then I would write a new song that's better than one of them. So then one would have to go. And that just continued for a couple of years. And eventually I was like, all right, I have to stop. These are the 8 songs. I'm perfectly happy with all of them. Now let me focus on these 8 and make these songs as good as I can, instead of trying to write like a whole new song. Sort of switch gears and just focus on each song, every second of every song. Like, did I repeat this part too many times? Like when this comes back, let me do something just a little different so that it's exciting still, so that people are familiar with it, but it's still exciting and a little bit different. You get down to like some microscopic stuff. And then you can also look at the whole album as one piece of work. And that's when the studio gets fun, is you find a weird guitar tone or a sound that you use in track 1. And it's like, oh, let's put that same tone in track 6. And then in the last song, it would fit there too. So that there is like a thread. Mm-hmm. There's a thread thematically and lyrically, but you can also put a common thread through the album sonically. or many threads sonically, little tones and sounds and phrases that might reappear throughout the whole album. So it's a cohesive experience.
Is this, in your view, a very guitar centric album? Are the guitars the spinal cord of the existence of Ghost at the Gallows?
Yeah, I mean, all my favorite bands are riff based bands, all of them. That being said, it's like I have enjoyed in the past few years giving other things the same amount of focus and dedication that I've always given to guitar. Guitar has been my favorite instrument since I started playing it. I played piano first, actually, but when I picked up a guitar, when I heard Jimi Hendrix, who gives a fuck about piano after you heard Voodoo Child, you know? But in recent years, I've been a lot more conscientious of the big picture, and songwriting being the big thing that I sort of became obsessed with, not just writing riffs, but writing really well structured songs, and also putting a lot of focus on the vocals and a lot of work into the vocals. That's why my vocals, the songs and what album is your favorite, that's subjective, but I think it's obvious my vocals have gotten better. Whether you like older albums more, I think it's very obvious the amount of work I put into the vocals. And I've always loved playing bass and figuring out really cool bass lines. Geezer Butler is the be all end all of bass playing for me. And working with Mike on the drums has been such a fun experience because he's such a skilled drummer, and his playing is like so far beyond my capabilities, but we have sort of the same musical DNA. We grew up on a lot of the same stuff, old school metal bands, old school hard rock bands. We have all kind of the same favorite drummers, guys like Tommy Aldridge and Vinny Appice and dudes like that. So yeah, every it's a guitar based project, but in the last few releases in the last few years, it's like I'm starting to really focus on every aspect of it outside of the guitars.
Starting as your solo project, moving more in towards a band, have you become less of a perfectionist, or actually has gone the other way around? Are you even more of a perfectionist now that there's more hands in the pot?
You have to know what to be a perfectionist about. So it's kind of like a catch-22, because I think the best ideas and the best riffs and the best lyrics appear spontaneously. So I don't think there's much of a point in sitting down with a guitar and really trying to write something great. Um, Even the best thing that you're going to sit and grind and be a perfectionist about, it's not going to be as cool as something that just hits you in the middle of the night, or you're doing something else and you start humming a riff in your head and you think, what the hell is that? Oh, that's a new riff. And, so there's like a spontaneous element to all this that is crucial. And you can't like force that or be a perfectionist about that. But then there's other elements, such as like the song structures, intro, verse, chorus, pre-chorus, that sort of thing. I am a perfectionist about that. Like every second of the song has to be interesting. And it's tricky to write a song that is familiar, but also unexpected and exciting. So there's a fine art to that. And I'm definitely a perfectionist about that. And yeah, I'm way more of a perfectionist than I was at the beginning of this, for sure, because I'm learning so much every time I do it, and my standards for myself are getting so much higher, and so my standards for the whole thing are getting so much higher. And I don't want perfect. I want it to be right. I want it to be real and sincere and right. And sometimes the right thing is imperfect. You might bend the note too far, but that's the thing that's going to make somebody feel something really profound. Or I might my voice might break in a way that I didn't mean for it to when I'm singing, but you're getting that raw emotion. So you have to know, like, sometimes the wrong thing is the right thing.
It's the wrong
So
thing, the right
I'm a
thing.
perfectionist about that. So it's a it's a strange thing to try to like quantify.
When I was recording the review, I haven't posted it yet. Well, at the time we're having the conversation, but I recorded already. And on my review, I said that I felt like this album was somewhat of a biography of Spirit of Drift. Like if you listen to this record from beginning to end, it kind of gives you a sense of where the band was and where the band is, and perhaps even opening doors to where the band could be. Do you see the progression throughout this record with some snapshots of the history of the band?
Absolutely. That's crazy you would pick up on that. And I think all of our records have the identity of what was done in the past, but also something new. And I think to some degree that's intentional because most of my favorite bands, that's what they do. So, like, if you showed somebody the first Black Sabbath record and you show somebody Sabotage, they might be like, how did they get there? Like, you can tell it's them. You can tell that's Ozzy singing. You can tell that's Tony and Geezer and Bill playing. But it's kind of like, how would they get from that record to that record? But then if you listen to all those records in order, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And I like that. I think, I have a musical identity and a musical DNA that can't be changed. It is what I am, who I am. My experiences in my life and as a fan of music are set. That's what it is. So it's like, how do I stay true to that, who I am as a songwriter and a musician, but keep it interesting for myself and maybe also for the listeners as well. So yeah, I think the new album is probably the best example of that, of any of them, because there's new stuff that we haven't done before. Like These Two Hands has like the folky country kind of thing that we never have gone all the way into. We've hinted at it. The last song kind of sounds more like our older stuff a little bit. It's some of that old school, like doomier, sad, gloomy stuff is coming back. A song like Siren of the South, we've never really done anything like that. It's sort of weird and progressive. So yeah, it's carrying everything that we've done, but also like introducing some new elements to keep it interesting for everyone.
I felt like you guys have always done that, but I think in this album is a little bit more noticeable or a little bit more clear. It's easier for the listener, maybe it was easier for me at least to pick up on it versus when I look back at some of the previous albums. Two songs I have to ask you about when it comes to the design of the record. That's Give Her to the River, which is the opening track, and Ghost at the Gallows, which is the closing song. I mean, the opening song has that atmospheric river sound. You feel like you're by the water. There's this nature, atmospheric elements at the beginning as it introduces the track, at the exit, and then Ghost at the Gallows, almost 9 minute, almost 8 minutes. I think it's almost 8 minutes, 7 minutes and 50 something seconds. It's a massive track at the end. It takes you on an incredible journey. It throws everything at you, including the kitchen sink. When you were putting the record together, because of the characteristics, they're very unique. Because there's no other songs on the record that sound like either or. The uniqueness of these two tracks definitely stands out. And because of that, did you feel like opening with one, closing with the other was the only choices available for you?
That's a great question. Originally, I had set in my mind that Ghost at the Gallows would be the opening track and Give Her to the River would be the closing track. And I had toyed with a couple other things, like maybe putting Ghost at the Gallows track 3 and then These Two Hands, and then maybe Hangman's Revenge, going from the more dynamic ballady kind of song into the ass kicker. Um, but never did I consider opening with Give Her to the River and closing with Ghost at the Gallows. That was the producer, Jeff Henson. I didn't tell him my ideas for the sequencing. And when we got pretty much done recording the songs, he said, can I put it in the order that I'm hearing it in and you take it home and listen to it? And I said, sure. And I got home and I put it on. Give Her to the River was first. And at first, I was so used to my own ideas that I was just like, there's no fucking way that'll work. But I sat there and listened to it and I was like, man, it's the only song to me that could open the album, honestly.
I agree. And same thing with Ghost at the Gallows. I don't think you can close with any other track because
Yeah,
that song has, it's like a movie, right? Like you want to finish the movie as close to the climax as possible, but also you still want to give some room after the climax for the story to settle down and for you to feel like there is an end to it. And that track has all of that. It has the climax, the settling down, it's over. If you put that song too early and then you give us something else, it's like, what's happening here? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're throwing
I
me
get
for a
it.
loop here. It kind of distorts the fluidity of the record. It's a lot better from a more concise point of view the way it is. At least that's my opinion after listening to
Thank you,
the album.
man. Yeah, I put a lot of time into that song. That was the second one that I wrote. I wrote These Two Hands first. I wrote that song second week of March 2020. And that song structurally did not really change. I added a couple of things I added like some extra beats and a couple measures, trying to sort of do like what Metallica would do on Master of Puppets, would like change the time signature on you, like flip it from 4/4 to 6/4. And I've always loved those kind of little tricks. But other than that, These Two Hands never really changed in 2 years, 2.5 years. Ghosts at the Gallows, I wrote that song next. And I spent a lot of time on that one with the stuff I was talking about with songwriting, like going in like, okay, this verse, we get into the chorus this way, but the next time the verse happens, let's do something different. What would Cannibal Corpse do there? So like throw some tremolo guitars in, even though it's not a death metal song. It's like that's what can make your band special, is you pull from different. I was pulling from Cannibal Corpse and Neurosis just as much as I'm pulling from like Pink Floyd and Gene Clark from the Byrds, and just trying to make something new out of all my influences. And I think Ghost at the Gallows is a good example of I think maybe I managed to make something new out of my influences.
I would say so. One last question for you. With the album around the corner, August 18th, everybody will be able to listen to it. Any plans to hitting the road, and more specific, playing Toronto? Because let's face the facts, I don't care about anybody else.
Yeah, the last guy asked about Toronto as well. I love Toronto, man. We haven't been to Canada in a long time, but we've always had a good time there. We are playing a few shows right after the release of the record, and we're playing a Metal Injection Fest in September. And yeah, we're just kind of looking at what makes sense for us. I know that High on Fire is putting a record out before too long. They're one of my favorite bands. They're one of the few bands going right now that I really respect and get excited about. Crowbar is another one, but we toured with them pretty recently. Yeah, we're just gonna. Of course, we need to tour on this record. We're just waiting for something that makes the most sense, because we just played Download and Hellfest the same day as Metallica and Maiden, so it's kind of hard to get excited about stuff, to be honest.
You're
So
jaded. You're a little bit
yeah,
jaded.
if we have to do a headlining tour, we'll do that and take out some bands we love. Otherwise, yeah, I would like to tour with High on Fire. We'll just have to see what happens.
Listen, don't hate me for saying what I'm going to say, but if you guys come up here with High on Fire, I'll watch you guys play and then I'll go home. I just don't have the same love that you do, but I'll definitely come out because I want to see you guys. So
Well,
like,
thank you. I'm
I'll come out and
flattered.
I'll watch you guys.
I'm flattered. Thanks.
Well, Nate, thank you very much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. All the best with the record, and I hope to see you here in Toronto soon, either as a headlining or on support for somebody else. High on Fire, whatever. I mean, I'll take it as it is.
Me
Beggars
too.
can't be choosers. So it would make you happy, so I'll take it. So thank you
Okay.
very much for your time. I really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you, Pedro. Thanks for having me, man.
Take care, man. Bye.
Cheers.